The New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports, or OASAS, provides this podcast as a public service. Opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the agency or state. This is Addiction, the Next Step.
Hey everybody, Jerry Gretzinger here, your host for Addiction, the Next Step. And this is our podcast that we produce proudly here at the New York State Offices of Addiction Services and Supports. And, we love doing all these episodes. Very often we do episodes where we're talking about services, supports, assistance that people can receive throughout the state of New York for any variety of addictions that they may be dealing with. But then sometimes we have a really wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to people who have lived experience, who have been through it. They've walked the walk, and they're good enough to sit down and talk the talk with us about what they lived through in the interest of, maybe helping others avoid certain things that they had to live through. And we have one of those opportunities today. My guest is Brian Cunningham, and Brian is an addictions program specialist too in Long Island in the regional offices for OASAS. So one of our own. Brian, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Gary, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And you know what I'm going to do first? People may be hearing me introduce you as Brian Cunningham. As far as I know, it's no relationship to our commissioner. It's just a similar last name.
Correct. There is no relation.
Right.
It was pretty funny once you got it. I got a couple jokes about it, but no relation.
Right. No nepotism here or anything. It's just a coincidence, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm sure some people would have been like, "Wait a minute, isn't that the same name?" So we've cleared that up. But Brian, so you reached out to us saying, I have a story that I'd like to share, and it's your own story. And like I was saying in the introduction here, sometimes this is so meaningful, and one of the most important things we can do is just to share real life stories about people who've lived through something like you have, and then to show how they got to where they are today. So first, tell me your motivation, why you reached out and said, I want to tell my story.
Well, I got to give you the credit for that, Jerry. At the last town hall we had, when you guys presented about what you offer and the podcast and everything like that, it actually really meant a lot. And I thought it was a great way for me to kind of share what I've gone through and what's happened to me, which is the original reason why I got into this field to begin with anyway. So I thank you for, shedding light on a way for me to tell my story, and hopefully people can hear it and learn from it too.
Well, good. I'm glad people hear what we're saying and acting on it, because again, we think this is so impactful and has so much potential to help people. So let's do this. So Brian, your story, it starts like most do, in their youth. And I think we were just talking before we started recording. You said a lot of times people think, oh, I came from a very good home. Everything was good. It was nurturing. It was supportive. And yet still life threw some curveballs at me. And we want to make sure people realize this sort of thing really can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime. So why don't you take us way back and start your story?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like I told you earlier, and I've said when I do tell my story, my upbringing, I would put up against anybody's for happiest. One of six, grew up in a great town, mom, dad, happily married, all that and everything like that. And yet I was still hit with addiction, and took me down a path that I definitely did not see myself or envision myself going down for a good amount of time. It doesn't really matter where you came from. We're all starting to understand that addiction is a brain disease and can affect anybody. And I'm a walking example of coming from a loved, great, supportive family, and still ended up almost throwing my life away and almost ending up in the grave. And luckily I was able to turn it around. But I tell everyone, even though you got that love and support, you can be going through some stuff, you still need to reach out and utilize people that care about you and, that are there for you.
All right. So let's do that then. I know, and that's good that you point out you came from a very loving family, and you could probably match anybody else who says they come from a loving family about, the upbringing that you had. And yet still, things presented themselves that led you down a path. So we've connected with those people. People might think, well, how could it possibly happen to me or my family? How did this start to happen to you in the family that you were a part of?
Great question. Honestly, I didn't realize it at the time. So like I said, I am one of six. And when I was probably about 13, I believe, it was 8th grade, my dad, unfortunately, got diagnosed with cancer. And at the time, I didn't really think that it would affect me in that negative way. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very big thing to happen to our family, but I just kind of thought, okay, something you got to deal with and kind of move on. And that, of course, he ended up getting sick and he wasn't around. My mom was taking care of the younger ones. And I just kind of got introduced to, substances. And the moment that I did, it was just an outlet. I felt that it was the way for me to deal with things that I didn't even know that I was dealing with, and to cope with things that were, for a 13-year-old, very hard to deal with, but I didn't say anything. And I wish that I had, and sometimes you might not identify, something might happen that you personally don't think is that big of a deal, but it is. And it can build up, and, but later on you realize that it was a way bigger factor than you realized. And that was a big contributing reason to where the path that I went down and the decisions that I made.
All right. So you had this news about your dad, dealing with his diagnosis. And so you were about 13, you said, at the time that you got that news. So
13,
and you said, substances. So let people know. So at that age, what substances were available to you that you started using?
So of course, you start with marijuana. It's readily available. Everybody has it. And then alcohol right off the bat. It was unfortunately it's easy to get. A lot of gas stations back in showing my age in the early 2000s didn't really care. You went in there, you paid a couple extra dollars, they give you some stuff under the table, or you always knew somebody who knew somebody. But the real problem with me started when I was about 17 and cocaine got introduced to me. And that was the moment that things started to spiral out of control for my life. And that was an 8-year run of just chaos and misery and depression and just not being able to control myself. And again, I've dabbled with them all. I've done opiates and the heroin, but I truly believe as well, too, that mental health, which goes hand in hand with it, I probably have a little bit of ADD, I believe. And I was at an age, I was in that area where they didn't really diagnose. And through the cocaine and the stimulant, I felt evened me out a lot. Dealing with depression put me in a good mood, didn't know what was going on. And also, Jerry, you don't expect to become a drug addict. I didn't expect at 17, the first time I do a line of cocaine, that I'm going to be in a hotel room with the lights off, IV using it or doing anything like that. I don't know. It happened so quickly, but also so slowly. And I know that sounds cliche, but it really does. Next thing I know, I look up and I'm 23 years old and my life is in shambles. But that was my progression, and it was happens fast.
So Brian, tell me this. So you were saying that you're using marijuana, cannabis at the time. You were also using some alcohol, and then the cocaine was introduced to you. So I'm just thinking too, if there are parents listening, or really young people as well, if they're listening, how was that introduced to you? Like, was there something that that somebody could have noticed or picked up upon, or like what brought that into the mix for you?
Peer pressure. Honestly, the big thing. It was something I wasn't anticipating. I can even tell you the first story real quick. I was at a school function. I was in the high school musical and choir, as well as sports. And me and a couple buddies after were waiting to go pick up some marijuana to just smoke and then go. And the person's like, actually, they don't have weed, they have coke. And I was like, didn't have to twist when I say peer pressure, it's not somebody shoving it down and encouraging you. My buddy offered it. I took a quick second to think about it. I said, yeah, sure, why not? What's the big deal? And that was it. And it became almost, I wouldn't say daily right away, but pretty quickly a daily event for me. And people knew. I mean, I even got called down to the office and talked to, but I'm a nice guy. I had a great family, and it was always the same thing. We're worried about Brian, but he's a nice kid. We're not. I think it'll be okay. And I wasn't. And I wasn't okay.
So even then, it sounds like there were assumptions. He's a good kid, good family. He'll be all right.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So I went to school. I was friends with everyone. I played sports. I did the musicals. I got along with the teachers. I like talking to people. I do it for a living, and it was always the same thing. He'll be all right. Listen, we know he's doing things, but I'm not really worried. And also, I wasn't talking. Like, I got called down to the social worker. They asked me what's going on. Like, listen, I'm just having fun. and whatever it might be, I hid how I was truly feeling. I hid what was going on. And again, I didn't think that it would go down the path that it did. But you're 17. You don't think that that's going to happen. I knew it all. Sure, I knew it all. I knew I was just going to do this for a little bit. And I was going to go to college and I was going to be fine. And I couldn't have been more wrong.
So, all right. So I know you said you started with the substances at 13. That's when you got the news about your dad. At 17, cocaine was introduced. What was happening with your father? Was he still going through treatment at that time, or where was that part of the impact on your life? Where was that piece now?
So he ended up going through having stem cell transplant, and then was in the hospital for a significant period of time, and then he actually had to stay at my uncle's house for, again, I don't know the exact month, but it was significant, a couple months. So he wasn't home. So my mom is home. I'm the second oldest, so I have an older brother who did his best. But I was just running around, and then I had 4 younger siblings, and my mom, God bless her, she's stuck at home raising them, doing the best that she can. Yeah. And again, Jerry, like I was at a time when addiction was not as open as it was. So my mom, I was confronted, I was approached, and I just lied, I finagled, I did everything that an addict does when they're in active addiction to get away with what I was doing, and there's only so much that she could do. And that was where it was. So yeah, my dad wasn't, and then when he was home, he wasn't present. He was undergoing treatment. He was going under, the steroids and all those different things. And my mom had to wait on him, and then she had to take care of the kids. So I kind of fell in this gray area of not being supervised and being a good kid, but then also causing a ton of drama and issues.
And so, Brian, let me ask you this now too. So you're at 17, dad's in and out because of treatment and other things that are going on. Mom's doing the best she can. You've gone from marijuana and alcohol to cocaine, and as you were saying earlier, other substances. And obviously you've turned things around. You're in recovery right now, but so what was that moment? And what was the progression from 17 and, oh yeah, I'm going to try cocaine? Like at what point were you at your lowest, and what was happening in your life? How was it impacting your family before you said, I got to change what I'm doing here?
Yeah. Again, they all knew. I think my mom knew, especially my mom knew for years. And then you can only hide it for so long, especially doing cocaine. Your sleep schedule's crazy. You're out all day. You're out all night. I remember the day. It was in October 2012, and I had crashed the car. And I'm standing in the driveway with my mom and my younger brother, and it just came pouring out of me. Like I'd gotten caught stealing money that night before, and everything kind of came crashing down on me. When I was 18, I had gotten caught stealing money, and I went to some outpatient, but it wasn't serious. And I was 18, I wasn't serious. And then I just continued on. But when I got caught that time, it kind of hit me that it was just like, I looked at where I was, where my friends were, what I was doing to my mom, was and is one of the nicest, best people in the world, to have her crying there over me, over what was going on. Outpatient was presented to me, and I knew that wasn't going to do it. And that was when I was like, I got to go to inpatient. And I went to Phoenix House in 2012. I entered treatment, which was not an easy thing to do, but was the best thing I did. But when it hits you, Jerry, it just kind of hits you. I still have dreams of my brother and my mom standing in the rain, of course, in my driveway, and just it pouring out of me. Like, I was ready. I needed that push. I think I was honestly ready, but I just needed someone to be like, hey, what's going on? And once it happened, it happened.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that too, because so often we hear that such a big piece of it is that, a person who's going to go into treatment needs to be ready to do that. They need to be committed to that. So that was that moment for you, right? So you were there, you were in the driveway, your mom was crying, and you finally made that realization, I got to make a change. Now, and at that point you still had, I'm sure your mom was supportive of you going into treatment the way you did, or how was that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. She had just offered to me, we spoke to a family friend who was a social worker, and she said, listen, you should do outpatient, made the recommendation. And I said no. And, my mom was supportive. The minute I told her I couldn't be home, she didn't fight. She said, whatever you need to do, I'll support you. And she did. And I wouldn't be where I am today without that family support of when I was in there. I remember my brother and his now wife, and his girlfriend at the time, coming to Phoenix House and having Thanksgiving. Like, that's some way for her to come see me. She doesn't really know me that well. She's coming to a rehab on Long Island when they live in Florida, but to come support me in the time of my need was really big. And that meant a lot. And having them and being supportive of me doing that, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you one more question too. I mean, the support from your mom, you said you had the girlfriend coming to see you, so that certainly that's one of the things we always hear about, right? Having supportive loved ones, supportive friends, a good support system to help through something like this. There are people who may not be quite as fortunate. There may be people who are in a similar boat, who are currently using substances and think to themselves, is this getting out of control? Is it more than I can handle? Should I go into treatment? What's your advice to them, regardless of what their situation may be? Because like I said, as unfortunate as some of your circumstances were, there was the fortunate part that mom loved you, that you were coming from a good family, they supported you. Not everybody's got that. So what would you say to folks who may or may not have the same situation about encouraging them that this is something you can do, you can get on top of, and you can put your life together?
Absolutely. Start with the meetings. So as much as the support is of my family, they don't know what I was going through. It's hard for somebody to relate when this is my first time going into treatment. I'm 24 years old. I don't know what I'm doing. And when I walked into those doors, I got my second family. And if it wasn't for them being in there and being around the people that have walked in my shoes, and I mean, a lot of the guys that I went in treatment with, they have done it. They knew the ins and outs of it and everything like that, which sometimes isn't good. But I took it for the positive and used them to be, what am I doing? How do I get sober? And I took what some positive people who I knew had the right idea and put it forward. But there's always somebody out there who's going through something similar, especially in the field of recovery and addiction with AA, Smart Recovery, and Thrive, and all those other great agencies out there. If you just put in that little bit of an effort and go to, I tell my patients, like, you can go to a meeting. If you sit there and don't say anything, nobody's going to know what you're going through. If you go to a meeting, put your hand up, hey, I'm new. I don't really know how to get sober. I don't really have anyone. I guarantee you by the time you walk out of that meeting, every single person's going to walk up to you saying, hey, what do you need? Well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Because that's what recovery is. It's about giving back. It's about helping those who need it and giving your, whether it's story or information, to somebody who's going through it and them taking it and using it for themselves, and then so on and so on and so on. So I just recommend there's between OASAS and all the other things that are out there, and especially with the phones, you can go on, type in AA meetings and stuff, somebody there, the minute you put your hand up, they will come to you. They will do whatever they can to get you in the right situation as well.
That's great. And Brian, I'm going to go back to the first thing you said. You said when you went in, you found your second family. And that seemed really important to me, because some people may feel very alone and wonder, well, how would I do this? How would I make it through? And you're right. There's a whole nother family, a whole nother support system waiting for you once you make that step. So that's great that you pointed that out.
Absolutely. And somebody, like you said, somebody might not have any blood family or anything like that. You can pick your family. I can't tell you that your mom is your family. You can pick who you want in your family to be supportive. And even I've made the decision in my life to surround myself around positive, supportive people who care about me and I care about as well. So you can go in there and pick the people that you want to help you get through, and they will.
And obviously the people that you worked with, were impactful, and here you are today. You're a part of our family at OASAS, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And Brian, just again, I want to thank you for sitting down and sharing your story. I think so many times hearing from someone, again, as I said, who walked the walk, lived through it, it can be so impactful for people. So again, thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with us today.
Gary, thank you so much. Like I said, this is why I got into the field originally. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for letting me tell my story. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing it. And I just want to tell everybody too, don't forget, there's always someone willing to listen and talk to you. You can just pick up the phone. It's 877-8-HOPE-NY. That's our Hope line, 877-8-HOPE-NY. And of course, if you just want to hop online, you can go to oasas.ny.gov, oasas.ny.gov. Everything you could possibly need as far as information on supports and services is right at your fingertips that way. I'm Jerry Gretzinger, your host. Until we see you next time, be well.